Swinging with the Devil. Chapter 1. A Fresh Start. The house on Elm Street squatted beneath a November sky the color of a bruise. Paint peeled from its siding in long, curling strips like dead skin, and the gutters hung at precarious angles, as if the building itself was slowly collapsing under the weight of secrets yet untold. To anyone else, it might have looked like the setting for a tragedy waiting to happen. But to 20-year-old Zaph Connors, standing on the cracked sidewalk with his meager possessions piled in the trunk of a car that was one bad pothole away from surrender, the house represented something dangerously close to hope. "This is it," he said, his breath forming ghost-white plumes in the cold air. "Home, sweet home." Beside him, Mary nodded without enthusiasm, her delicate features pinched with exhaustion or disappointment. These days, Zaph found it increasingly difficult to tell the difference. They'd been married just 13 months, and already the golden promises of their wedding day had tarnished, like cheap jewelry exposed too long to harsh elements. "It's not what I expected," Mary said finally, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. The gesture was familiar, one of the little habits that had once made his heart skip. Now it just reminded him of how young she was, how young they both were, playing at being adults in a world designed to chew up and spit out naive dreamers like themselves. "It's what we can afford," Zaph replied, the words coming out sharper than he'd intended. He softened his tone with effort. "It's just temporary, until we get on our feet." Mary's smile didn't reach her eyes. "Fresh start, right?" A phrase they'd repeated so often during the 14-hour drive that it had become a mantra, empty of meaning. Fresh start, as if they could outrun their problems by putting 300 miles of asphalt between themselves and the smoldering ruins of the life they'd left behind. The key stuck in the lock, requiring a jiggle and a curse before the door grudgingly swung inward on hinges that screamed like torture victims. The smell hit them immediately, damp and disuse, undercut with something vaguely chemical that Zaph couldn't identify. The floorboards groaned beneath their feet as if protesting the intrusion. "We can fix it up," Zaph said, not believing his own words. "Make it ours." Mary moved past him without comment, her shoulders rigid with tension. They'd been fighting more than not lately, arguments that started as whispers and escalated to screams, leaving both of them raw and wounded. The neighbors at their old place had learned to turn up their televisions when the Connors' voices began to rise. Zaph watched his wife disappear into what would be their bedroom and tried to remember what it had felt like to love her, without the bitter aftertaste of resentment. The memory was there, but growing fainter by the day, like a radio signal fading as the car drives into the mountains. His father's parting words echoed in his head. "You made your mess, son. Running won't unmake it." The old man had always had a gift for cutting through Zaph's defenses, finding the soft underbelly of his insecurities and slicing them open with surgical precision. Mary reappeared in the doorway, her face composed into careful neutrality. "The bedroom's not terrible. Needs new curtains." Such a normal comment, so incongruous with the churning undercurrent of their relationship that Zaph almost laughed. Instead, he nodded. "I'll bring in the boxes." As he turned to the car, Mary called after him. "You said something about a computer shop? The one with the Help Wanted sign?" Zaph paused, one foot on the sagging porch step. "Yeah, going to check it out tomorrow." A hint of genuine hope flickered across Mary's face. "That's good. You'll be good at that." For a moment, they were just two young people starting out, supporting each other's dreams. The illusion was comforting, if fleeting. "Yeah," Zaph said, holding on to the moment like a drowning man clutching at driftwood. "Yeah, I think I will." The Bits Bytes Computer Repair shop smelled of dust, ozone, and possibilities. Located in a narrow storefront wedged between a laundromat and a pawn shop, its windows were covered with faded posters advertising software that had been cutting edge 3 years ago. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead like trapped insects, casting everything in a sickly pale glow that made the beige computer casings look like artifacts from a forgotten civilization. Zaph felt at home immediately. A man emerged from the back room, wiping his hands on a cloth that might once have been white. In his mid-30s, he had thinning sandy hair and glasses that magnified his eyes to an almost unsettling degree. giving him the appearance of some nocturnal creature momentarily caught in daylight. "Help you?" The man's voice was friendly but cautious, the default setting of small-town shopkeepers toward strangers. "I saw the help wanted sign," Zaph replied, gesturing toward the window. "If you're still looking." The man sized him up with a glance that seemed to take inventory of everything from Zaph's second-hand sneakers to the intelligent gleam in his eyes. "You know computers." "Since I was 14, Zaph said, then added hastily, "I've built systems from scratch, troubleshot everything from bad RAM to corrupted BIOS. I can diagnose most problems just by listening to how a machine boots up." The man's expression shifted from skepticism to interest. "Not many people around here know their way around a motherboard." He extended his hand. "Ted Morrow, owner, technician, and janitor all rolled into one. Zaph Connors." The handshake was firm, a good sign. "New in town." "I figured," Ted said with a chuckle that revealed slightly crooked teeth. "Town's small enough everyone knows everyone else's business." He gestured to an open computer case on the workbench, its electronic innards exposed like a patient on an operating table. "Show me what you do with this one. Customer says it keeps shutting down during games." Zaph approached the machine with the reverence of a priest approaching an altar. His fingers moved with practiced precision, checking connections, examining components. Computers made sense to him in a way people never had. They were logical, predictable. They didn't harbor hidden resentments or make promises they couldn't keep. If something went wrong, you could identify the problem, replace the faulty part, and restore order to the system. If only relationships could be repaired so methodically. 20 minutes and a thermal paste reapplication later, Ted was nodding with approval. "You're hired. When can you start?" "Tomorrow?" Zaph tried not to sound desperate, though they both knew he was. Ted laughed, a surprisingly warm sound in the sterile environment. "Tomorrow it is. 9 sharp." He hesitated as if measuring his next words carefully. "Listen, my wife Sue and I are having a little get-together for New Year's. Nothing fancy, just a few drinks to ring in 99. You and your girlfriend." "Wife," Zaph corrected, watching Ted's eyes widen slightly. A beat of silence then. "You and your wife should come. Good way to meet some folks in town." Something in Ted's expression, a flicker of calculation perhaps, made Zaph hesitate. But the need to belong, to establish some kind of foothold in this strange new place, overwhelmed his caution. "We'd like that," he said, and tried to convince himself it was true. Mary's excitement about the party was almost childlike, a glimpse of the girl he'd fallen for. Impulsive, full of life, eyes sparkling with anticipation at the promise of new experiences. She'd tried on 4 different outfits before settling on a black dress that hugged her curves in a way that made Zaph simultaneously proud and uneasy. "You don't think it's too much?" she asked, twirling in front of their bathroom mirror, the dress riding up her thighs as she moved. Zaph tugged at the collar of the sweater his mother had given him last Christmas, still too large for his lean frame. "It's just a house party, not a nightclub." The words hung in the air like a match struck near gasoline. Mary's expression darkened, the sparkle in her eyes extinguished as suddenly as a candle in a draft. "You want me to look like some frumpy housewife?" Zaph felt the familiar tension coiling between them, a serpent awakening. "I didn't say that. I just don't want my new boss thinking I married a..." He caught himself just in time, but the unspoken word, slut, seemed to materialize in the space between them anyway. Mary's eyes narrowed dangerously. "A what?" Her voice had dropped to that deceptively quiet tone that Zaph had learned to fear more than her shouting. "Go on, say it." Shame flooded him, hot and bitter. Where had that thought come from? What kind of man thought that about his own wife? The kind who'd seen her flirting with his friends one too many times, a vicious inner voice answered. The kind who'd caught her in one too many small deceptions. "Nothing," he muttered, retreating both physically and emotionally. "You look beautiful. Wear whatever you want." The argument deflated, not resolved but postponed, added to the growing pile of unspoken resentments that was slowly choking the life from their marriage. Ted and Sue's house was a revelation, a colonial with actual shutters framing the windows, and a wraparound porch bedecked with twinkling fairy lights. Next to their own shabby rental, it looked like something from a different world entirely. A world where adults lived orderly lives, paid bills on time, and didn't lie awake at night wondering where their next mistake would come from. The woman who opened the door matched the house, put together, attractive in a comfortable way, with auburn hair cascading over her shoulders and laugh lines around eyes that spoke of genuine joy rather than forced smiles. She wore a green sweater that complemented her figure without calling attention to it, and her smile transformed her from pretty to striking. "You must be Zaph. Ted's been talking about you all day. Says you're a computer genius." Her gaze shifted to Mary, and something passed between the women, a silent communication that set off warning bells in Zaph's mind. "And you're Mary? Welcome, welcome. Come in out of the cold, for God's sake." The interior of the house was warm and inviting, smelling of cinnamon and pine. A Christmas tree still stood in the corner, though Christmas was a week past, its colored lights sending rainbow patterns dancing across the hardwood floor. Family photos lined the hallway, Ted and Sue in various locations, sometimes accompanied by children who must belong to siblings or friends. Beers in the fridge, wines on the counter, and Ted's got the hard stuff hidden somewhere, Sue said with a conspiratorial wink. "Make yourselves at home. Ted's in the den with his computer parts scattered everywhere, as usual." Mary made a beeline for the wine, while Zaph found his way to the den. Ted was indeed surrounded by electronic components, a half-assembled tower on the coffee table in front of him, looking like a surgeon in mid-operation. "Zaph, you made it!" Ted's face lit up with what seemed like genuine pleasure. "Come see this beauty I'm putting together. Pentium 3, 450 megahertz, and check this out." He held up a RAM stick like it was a precious gemstone. 128 megabytes of RAM. This bad boy's going to fly. The tension that had been building in Zaph's chest eased. This was familiar territory. Safe. "Is that a Voodoo 3 card? Man, I've been dying to get my hands on one of those." "You know your stuff," Ted said appreciatively. "Grab a beer and pull up a chair. Let me show you what this thing can do." The evening progressed pleasantly enough. Ted was knowledgeable and easy to talk to, and Sue kept appearing with trays of food and fresh drinks, her laughter musical as she teased her husband about boring their new neighbor with computer nerd talk. Zaph found himself relaxing, the constant knot of anxiety in his stomach loosening as the alcohol took effect. It was nearly midnight when he realized he hadn't seen Mary in over an hour. She'd been talking with Sue in the kitchen last he checked, but now the kitchen was empty except for dirty dishes and abandoned glasses. "Looking for your wife?" Ted asked, his words slightly slurred. They'd been through a fair number of beers by this point. "Yeah, not sure where she wandered off to." Ted stood up, swaying slightly. "We need more drinks anyway. Sue probably dragged her off to show her the house or something. Women, right? Always with the home tours." They made their way toward the kitchen, Ted throwing an arm around Zaph's shoulders in a gesture that was perhaps too familiar for their short acquaintance. The contact made Zaph vaguely uncomfortable, though he couldn't have said why. "You know," Ted said, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, "Sue really likes you." Zaph nodded, focusing on walking straight. "She's nice. You're both nice." Ted's grip tightened, fingers digging into Zaph's shoulder. "No, I mean she really likes you." There was an emphasis on the word that sent a chill down Zaph's spine. "If she, tries anything, it's okay, just go with it." Zaph stopped walking, pulling away from Ted's arm as if it had burned him. "What?" Ted stared at him for a moment, then blinked rapidly, like someone waking from a trance. "Never mind," he said too quickly. "We're here. Let's get those drinks." As they gathered fresh beers and a bottle of wine, Zaph couldn't shake the uneasiness that had settled over him. The warm feeling of belonging that had been building all evening was rapidly cooling, replaced by something darker and more uncertain. Ted's words echoed in his mind, heavy with implication. He glanced at his new boss, now humming tunelessly as he arranged bottles on a tray, and wondered what exactly he and Mary had gotten themselves into. The house suddenly seemed less welcoming, its warmth a deception designed to lure the unwary. The thought crossed his mind that perhaps they should leave now, make their excuses and retreat to the safety of their shabby rental. But a deeper, darker part of him, the part that had grown increasingly dominant in recent months, was curious. What exactly was Ted suggesting? And where exactly was Mary?